All right, everyone, welcome back to the Be Fit podcast. I'm your host, Connor Murphy, as always, joined today with one of my best friends in the whole world, Nesbitt Hagood, also known as Bubba. Welcome to the show.
Thanks, Connor. It's great to be here.
Where'd you get the nickname Bubba, and why does everyone call you Bubba?
It's an easy one. So my real name is Nesbitt Ward Hagood IV. All right, my dad was a Marine when I was born. I was the second child. My sister was a year old, and she couldn't say Nesbitt.
It's a tough one.
It's a tough one, yeah. She was just starting to walk, and she couldn't say brother really well. So when she said brother, it came out as Bubba, and then that just stuck for my entire life.
And is there nothing to do with Louisiana down there?
Yeah, so everybody there in the family is, from Louisiana, and it turns out that it's a thing, right? About 30% of all male-born children are at one point called Bubba in the New Orleans area. So it's very common. Like you walk in the airport and you'll hear, Bubba, Bubba, trying to catch their little kid running down the aisle. So
it makes sense, but Bubba stuck with you.
Yeah, and I kind of embraced it. I mean, Nesbitt didn't ever kind of resonate with where I thought the kind of person I wanted to be until I joined the faculty at MIT. Right.
I was like, there's really no other person that I would know that would fit in as Nesbitt other than you and with your accolades, but yeah, I like Bubba better.
So at MIT, after I joined the faculty, I was Nesbitt because nobody would do, they have a kind of a secretarial pool, and, you're being a junior faculty there, you ask them to do, hey, can you copy these reports for me and send this email or do anything like that, and nobody would do it for Professor Bubba. They just laugh, right? So I went to Nesbitt professionally. I stayed Nesbitt for about 10 years, and then now I'm kind of back to Bubba.
So Bubba just dropped some bombs on us there, talking about being faculty, not just attending, but being faculty at MIT. How old were you when you became faculty for MIT?
Oh, geez, 26, 27?
27 years old as faculty for MIT. For those of you, okay, let's give, I'm going to give Bubba a little bit more of an introduction here. I don't normally say people's accolades because I like getting into stuff, but I feel like yours are so unbelievably significant that they're fantastic. Bubba is a rocket scientist. So when people say it's not rocket science, Bubba can say, well, this technically is. Rocket scientist, went to MIT, professor at MIT, has a bajillion more things that we want to get into and talk about, which we will, but let's talk about the experience at MIT. I want to talk about what led you to want to go to MIT, and at what point in time did you realize that you were smarter than everyone else?
It's all a matter of degrees. So I was valedictorian in high school. So I kind of knew that I was good at math, and I wanted to get away from home and out of Louisiana when I was graduating from high school. Just wanted to get out and see the world. And MIT gave me a full ride. I think my family paid $2,000 to get me to MIT. So student loans were awesome. I think I exited with like $50,000 in debt from my undergraduate years. So it's So I just wanted to go someplace out, and they gave me the most money. So I didn't go to Princeton. Went to MIT. You show up at MIT, coming from what was one of the better high schools in New Orleans, but it's a whole different world out there. I basically started drinking heavily and ended up punching holes in the walls of my fraternity to deal with the stress. I mean, you walk in the first day, first class in physics, right? And you think, I know physics pretty well. And you get like a 20 out of 100 on the test, and you're like one of the high scores. But just being exposed to like how little you know about anything, right? And how hard things could be. And like everybody around you is like amazing. They've all done incredible things. Like one of my best friends had double 800s on his SAT. Complete mess up, right? But
What do you mean by complete mess up?
Well, I mean, he would drink a lot, didn't go to the tests. He had all these capabilities, and he ended up switching majors 3 times. Finally ended up being an electrical engineer and doing computer programming, with his skills and stuff. But, you meet these people who are off the charts, and, they're just people too, right?
What do you think leads to that? I mean, it kind of sounds like it might be a common thing. Is it just always being smart and then faced with the challenge, or is it that like you've always kind of like been a nerd and now you've been exposed to like having this whole new world of partying or going out or college or maybe freedom?
Yeah, so it's freedom. I remember you're living at home in high school and very directed, and then all of a sudden you got a lot of freedom to do what you want to do. But it's also the fact that you were king of the hill, of your little tiny anthill, and you realize the anthill's way bigger than you thought it was, right? And you're no longer thinking of the hill anymore. So a lot of what kind of gives you validation as a person is just not there anymore. So you have to figure something else out.
Did you play any sports growing up and in college, or even just like recreationally around that time?
I wrestled a little bit in high school. That was a lot of fun, but didn't do it a lot. It was mostly like in the academic things at high school. And then MIT, I joined crew, and I was pretty much, doing the crew life for 4 years in undergraduate.
Makes sense to why you're good at rowing.
I'm decent rowing. I wish I was like, a foot taller.
Don't we all?
Better on a boat. But yeah, I really enjoy the camaraderie. I like the focus, and that kind of helped balance things out in college.
When did you know that that aerospace or rocket science, if you will, was something that you wanted to study, or maybe even just something that intrigued you?
Yeah, my whole life I've wanted to be a rocket scientist and be an astronaut or something. Then you realize you can't be an astronaut, so you end up being the next best thing, which is somebody who builds spacecraft.
Why can't you be an astronaut?
My eyes are too bad.
Oh.
Yeah, so I can't see well enough to get really, for the number of people. Eventually they'll send poor-sighted people up into space, but not right now.
You got to be able to.
Us genetically flawed people are not allowed in space right now. So
you can't go, but you can build it, and you
Yeah.
can send to those people that you're very envious of.
Yeah, exactly. So I realized pretty quick I couldn't do that. So I just wanted to kind of get involved in somehow, and I've always been infatuated with going out and doing things in space. It's really weird because when I joined the faculty, even though it was aeronautics and astronautics and anomaly space stuff, I did some space stuff, but I did a lot of other things too, not just space technology and aeronautics and astronautics, more like just engineering systems.
What happened with Apollo 13?
I don't know all the details. I did watch the movie.
So from
that is actually before my time. You joke me all the time and say, "Oh yeah, back."
Didn't you study that? I feel like that'd be something important to study.
No. Actually, I had a couple of major fixes I got involved in. It turns out, I don't know. There was a Galileo spacecraft that went to Jupiter, and it was kind of a famous one because it had a bad antenna and it was all messed up, and they launched it from the shuttle. But it turns out 3 days before it was supposed to be launched, they've discovered that they thought it was rotating clockwise when it came out of the shuttle, but it was actually rotating counterclockwise. So the guidance system had it spinning the wrong way, and it was like a $5 billion mission, and it would have been completely lost the moment it was launched if they hadn't have caught it 3 days before it was supposed to be launched out of the shuttle. And the space program is all like that. It's like just at the very edge of time they catch it, and it's amazing. These things blow up because they're complicated, and it's amazing. The successes are all because somebody stepped in like right at the last minute and said, "Wait, it's going the wrong way."
Which is funny because us, simpletons, you're like, yeah, that's one thing that I understand has been like, clockwise has to go with clockwise. But I'm sure there's so many different details that like have to be checked that it's like.
Yeah, these things are insanely complicated, and there's so many things that just get missed, and it's just a tribute. Like, the whole time, like the Webb Space Telescope going up, and I'm familiar with a lot of missions and stuff like that, and I was just like. I said, there's no freaking way they're going to get this to work. There are too many steps that have to happen properly. There's like 300 steps after deployment. That's after it's like 2 million miles from Earth. They've got to like send the signal in, and a few minutes later, they get to know whether it worked or not, right? It's like completely like remote control, and there's all these deployment steps, and it was just absolutely astounding to me that they actually got that working and it's performing the way it is out there. But that's a huge tribute because I know a little bit about what it takes to kind of get these systems out there, and it's just amazing.
What's the most interesting thing or project that you've worked on? Or I guess, yeah, what's the most interesting? And then, like, what are you most proud of from that side of your life?
Probably the most proud would be a certain device, the Hubble Space Telescope. So they launched it, and they discovered, oh shit, this $500 million mirror was polished wrong, right? And it's out of focus, right? Right. So they go take the pictures, and there's like fuzzy pictures, these galaxies. They can't get them focused because the mirror is bust. The mirror is not right, right? And just one little thing, and 10 billion things that got through the system. So NASA's scrambling, and it turns out the person who was in charge of optics for that, or the Tiger team to fix it, was my office mate at the time. James Fanson. He's now running the Large Magellanic Telescope Array in Chile. We had 6 weeks to come up with and deploy a fix for that. And the problem is they can do another mirror, a correction mirror, but they had no way of getting it there and figuring out how to put it in the right place so that it was actually going to correct it properly. And we figured out a whole stage. We talked to people. So I was working I was like a volunteer, right, helping him out and get it deployed, and we did it. We got it deployed. We went up the Wide Field Planetary Camera 2. They got it up there. The astronauts got it in there. They moved it into position, and lo and behold, it worked. Right, and I'm pretty proud of that. I'm just a random no-name person on that, but I worked really hard, and it got it to work. So that was kind of fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Is that, would you say that's like the biggest project you worked for as a rocket scientist?
That probably had the most impact.
Yeah.
Yeah. As far as, 20 years of good photos.
Potentially saved the United States a lot of money.
Yeah, it did make that platform workable, and so that was fun.
That's cool. So
I'm still good friends with James. He's doing wonderful things down in Chile right now. It's an amazing telescope. It's kind of overshadowed a little bit by Webb, but it's still doing some. Yeah, it's like 50 meters across. It's gigantic segmented telescope.
So you went to MIT, became a rocket scientist. What is the actual degree?
Aeronautics and astronautics.
Aeronautics and astronautics. Is there any other degree where someone would be considered a rocket scientist?
No, there's it's like undergraduate, graduate, doctorate. And, there's multiple possible degrees there. Yeah.
So he's a rocket doctor, which is funny because last week we had Dr. Rocket on here. Now we have the rocket doctor.
Yeah, exactly. He and I chuck back that quite a bit. He's better at bar games than I am.
Yeah, he is. Interestingly enough, and this is what segue. Everyone's like, Connor, this guy's way smarter than you. Why is he on the BFit podcast? Well, fortunately for us, Bubba's not just a nerd, and he is also incredibly accomplished when it comes to general physical preparedness in competing in CrossFit and competing in boxing and doing all sorts of different physical feats. What you can actually notice on him is some scars on his neck that were from what?
Well, my partner on the call today thought I tried to hang myself, but that's not it. It's just from the wetsuit rubbing against your neck after 3 hours of swimming against the tide. Just eventually goes through all the lubricants you put down there, and it just starts wearing the skin away.
What event did you do?
That was the 2024 Tampa Bay Frogman Swim. It's supposed to be a 5K swim across Tampa Bay to raise money. It's a charity fundraiser for the Navy SEAL Foundation. I've done it. This will be my 4th year, and I just love raising money. It's a cause that I believe in, and I've got some connection with the people it's helped. It's always pretty challenging. It's relatively cold water for me. 60 degrees is cold, right? So I'm in a wetsuit and that kind of stuff. But it's really more cold because you're in there for so long. And this year, the tides just were not lining up. And, for an hour, I was swimming hard and getting absolutely nowhere. Just like the buoy was just not getting closer. And it was very, very, I was getting pretty despondent at the point.
Demotivating, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was horrible. Right? And the waves were pretty kick. The wind was just enough to kick up the waves, and it was pretty miserable. But then you think about what you're doing it for, and you just knuckle down and say, stop feeling sorry for yourself, and just kind of keep pulling on. Eventually, get across the line. Just kind of keep swimming. But yeah, it's always a trying event. I'm still recovering from it, as you can tell. It's going to take a week for those for the rash of the burns to heal up.
I've never seen them on the front. Well, I mean, I've seen them on the front, but for a lot of times you see.
Yeah, usually it's in the back, but I had a
and
new wetsuit that was better there. But my hat, the kind of the neoprene hat I wear,
the hood.
Yeah, it was the strap underneath it, and then behind it, you can't tell it was behind my head. Yeah, it's hard to even wear a beanie right now.
You talked about the reason and cause why you do it, which is something common that you are used to with doing hero workouts in CrossFit. When did you start doing CrossFit?
Yeah, so the story's kind of actually a little fun. My wife at the time, now divorced and remarried, but my wife at the time came home, and she was just raving about this new personal trainer she had at the Boston sports clubs in Wellesley, right? And she was just going on and on about this wonderful guy. And I said, okay, I got to meet this guy. I got to get to know him pretty well and find out because there's definitely something going on here. That her trainer was Ben Bergeron, right? So I got to know him, and then he started doing fitness classes at a school. He was kind of athletic director. He became an athletic director so I started doing that like 2007. Then through 2008, we were at the Carroll, not the Carroll school, but the other school. And started doing classes, did one a week, then twice a week. And I remember just being amazed at some of the things people could do. But back then, we didn't really know what was like real performance. It was like, there's lots of kind of classic workouts like Cindy, right? And back then, we were like super excited to do like 10 rounds of Sydney in 20 minutes, right?
So when Bubba mentions Cindy is a classic CrossFit benchmark workout where you perform as many rounds as possible in 20 minutes of 5 pull-ups, 10 push-ups, and 15 air squats. And the reason for these benchmark workouts were that you could actually track your progress. You know the time, you know the reps, and your fitness level was how many rounds you could perform in that 20-minute window. There's movement standards, there's all sorts of stuff. But back in the day in 2007, if you were doing Cindy in a gym, you were either you knew what CrossFit was or you were a psychopath. Those were the only two options. There was no, hey, this is a different fitness.
Yeah, and there wasn't a body of knowledge about how hard it was and what you could do. I mean, I remember like Ben and I had one against each other, and he would probably laugh at this, but he was doing sub 5-minute France. Right? Which, for people who know CrossFit, like now they're doing it like a minute 15, right? It's things like that. And but back then, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe you did that fast. And it was like there was this feeling of discovery. You were discovering new things. Like, oh my God, I can do this. Oh my God, you can do this. It was exciting, kind of to get to know that. So I got deep into the Kool-Aid and was working out like 4 or 5 days a week and pushing myself super hard and really getting into it.
And that led to, and what year was that? I mean, we don't want to date you, just because everyone probably thinks you're really, really young. But what year? How old were you when you started CrossFit?
Jesus, I don't know. I'm 60 now, so I go back.
He said it, not me.
It was 17.
You wouldn't guess he's 60.
It was 17 years ago, so that would be 30, 33, no, 43, 44.
I mean, you're the math guy.
Yeah, I don't do well in addition and subtraction and multiplication.
He can build you a rocket.
I actually almost failed multiplication.
Don't ask him to tie your shoes.
No, I'm not good at like normal that kind of math. Probably. So the first time I went to the games was 2011. I was 49.
So how many times have you competed at the CrossFit Games?
I've competed 6 times at the CrossFit Games.
6 times competitor at the CrossFit Games.
At the various masters, not as an individual, but as masters in the various divisions.
Well, it's a masters individual, but not the main division of what you see, but in the masters divisions where there's categories that move every 5 years.
Right. Yeah. So back then they weren't every 5 years, but they like
if you're older than 40, you can compete. Shit. All right.
Yeah, I was like they were 50 plus is like all the masters in one category over 50, and then they said, okay, we're going to do a below 50 category. So there's 1 year I was in the below 50s. So.
Are you the only person who's competed at the CrossFit Games who also has a doctor's in rocket?
Probably. There's not a lot of overlap in that.
You can have enough.
That Venn diagram is pretty small.
Categories where you're going to hit that, which is, I mean, listen, it's incredible. And what's really incredible and what it speaks to more than anything is health and longevity and life. And I always love it because I tell people our stories all the time, and I'm almost proud to say, like, I almost wish you were older. I'm like, no, Bubba hangs with us. He does everything. We do the workouts together. He does the swims. He just did a 5K swim in Tampa Bay, and his accomplishments are incredible. But he still takes the time to take care of his body, to work hard, and then as well as that is to play hard and be able to go out and have late nights and and celebrate accomplishments and do all of these things. And so like that is I think the greatest like overall.
Yeah, I mean, there's people in the gym who've come in and they're 80 years old, right? And they've been not doing physical activity for a long time, and they put themselves back in the ring. And CrossFit gyms can be intimidating sometimes, but I try to befriend them all and kind of work them through the motions. I help them out. Like Ben Bergeron's dad has come back in the gym, and it's great to like see him do this stuff. And it's like at any level, throwing yourself back into things that are uncomfortable for you is valuable, right? And that's what convinced me to like do the swim again. In 21, I almost died. I got hypothermia. I was in the tent. It was just a really bad experience for me, and I kind of like got scared. I wasn't going to do it anymore. And this year I said, "Damn it, I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna say it was just as bad." Right? I didn't get hypothermia this time, but you just got to keep yourself trying new things, throwing yourself out there, get in the ring. It's not you compared to everybody else. Because at this point, anybody can beat me in anything, right? in CrossFit, it's crazy what the sport's become. But it's just keeping yourself challenged and keeping yourself in the game.
How do you get that mentality? I feel like that's a tough mentality for someone like you to get, who has seemingly from high school to college to being a professor. It's like you've been the best, or if not the best, in a group or categorized people of the best. So how do you step into something that you are going to potentially or likely suck at initially?
Yeah, well, nothing has come easily. So I've always sucked at everything I did in the beginning. So you gotta work on it, and there's the list of things I suck at is just endless. So there's lots of things. I try not to spend all my time on the list of things I'm good at, and really try to work at things that I'm not good at. So I'm kind of just growing at all times. And like, a couple of years ago, I said, I'm going to learn how to surf. I've never surfed in my entire life, right? You're going out there and trying to do that, I'm never going to get the 10,000 hours and be skilled at it, but I just love getting out there and throwing me in scary situations and trying something new, right? And eventually I get to the point where it's a lot more fun than terrifying. Yeah, I just like to keep myself kind of going in those situations and always kind of keep learning. And a lot of people get comfortable, especially you get older. It's easy to get comfortable and not throw yourself into more uncomfortable situations. And that's where you start kind of getting old.
How did you not get How did you avoid getting comfortable?
So like to go back to the beginning of CrossFit, that was just discovery. I'd never been. I rode in college, but then I took like 30 years off and was like going to the gym like a couple times a week and lifting weights and 30 pounds overweight and stuff like that. So it was like saying, oh, wow, my body can eventually do this and I can do that. And it's like discovery. And then, kind of tapped into the competitive side of me. I like beating people and I'd like to be, competitive in workouts. And there's an element of CrossFit, which is, timed. You're with other people. You're trying to compete. And that held up for a good, many years. And then you realize that doesn't stay with you. I mean, the competition's okay, but you're really competing against your old times, and you're really trying not, eventually it's trying not to hurt yourself too bad, right?
Yeah.
Right. So now it's like, okay, I'm learning. It's a whole new world of discovery where you're trying to figure out, okay, how did I, stay in the game and to keep doing things and keep pushing myself and growing, but not end up hurting myself in the process. So it's everything's learning something new. I'm trying to figure it out. I don't have the answer on that one.
Do you ever have any fear? Do you have any fear where, people are going to be like, oh, look at this guy who sucks at this, or have you just had so much success in your past life that it's okay to suck at one thing?
Yeah. So I spent like the better part of 2 nights ago talking to people about like you're the dumbest rocket scientist I've ever met, right? So that's the phrase people give me, and it's absolutely true. I'm very good at some things, and I'm really, really bad at other things, right? And I think that's that's kind of a philosophy I have. Like everybody's really good at a few things, and probably suck at other things, and you just have to embrace that, because that's life, and you try to get less sucky at the things you're bad at, right? And you try to utilize the things you're good at as much as you possibly can, So just because, I've been at MIT and I've got some success on the engineering side, it doesn't mean I'm a great person manager. It doesn't mean I'm a great communicator. It doesn't mean I'm a great. There's the list of skills you need to be successful in life is so long. Being able to piece technical things together is just one of those 20 important skills, right? And I'm weak in not 10 of them, right? So it's people expect, because you're good at one thing in a kind of a obvious way, that you'll therefore be good at other things. Life isn't like that. I mean, I imagine there are people like yourself, you're really naturally good at a lot of physical activities, surprisingly so. And I'll tell a story about you that's just absolutely incredible. But there are things you're bad at too, right?
Yeah, like everything else that doesn't require some athletic capacity.
Yeah, but there was one time at my house, we were just hanging out, and I had some rings, because I was a CrossFit crazy person, and I had some rings hanging in the house. I had a big overhead that you can do muscle ups and stuff like that. And we were just, we had a bunch of guys in the house, and we were just throwing the football around inside the house. It was kind of a wide open space. And Connor says, "Hey, you want to? I bet I can throw this football through this ring, right?" And you could not fit the ball through the ring. I mean, it was tough if you wanted to. There's a wooden ring. It's about yay big around. The football barely passed through. If you were holding both at the same time and pushing it through. Connor steps about I'd say about 50, maybe 30, 20 yards. He was really
maybe not 20 yards. 20 yards, maybe 20 feet.
I don't know. It just winds up, throws the ball, goes right through the ring. The ring didn't even know to move. It just kind of doing and the ball goes right through. It's like, what the hell? All my life I've wished for some sort of natural athletic ability, where I could actually just kind of do something without tripping or falling, or CrossFit's great because it's the same thing. You repeat it again and again and again and again, so you can practice. But running in football or baseball or some other motions, I'm lousy at that shit. And I got no kind of natural athletic capabilities besides being into it and trying mental toughness. It's the only thing I've got going for me. It's just in crazy capabilities. But, yes, you've got that. You've got amazing athletic abilities. But, there's other things that you don't. And everybody's like that. Everybody has super strong things and things that they need to work on.
I mean, I like that. I think where success comes is being able to embrace that and being able to do things that you suck at. However, this is something where I've always, something I've always liked to do with my friends is I always like to ask our friends about each other. And it's how would you describe Bubba to someone who's never met him before? And a couple of people, that's at Dee's wedding, that's a couple of people that I'd asked Marino, and in that speech was hey, how would you describe this person? But when I first met you, and something that I admire more than anything, when I first met you, technically I didn't know I met you until you came down to St. Thomas. But remember at Morse Tavern?
Yeah, I remember.
After that one. Yeah. That one doesn't really count. But Jeff and James, two good friends of mine, were like, hey, we're going to come down. The whole plan was, in a couple days before, they were like, hey, we have a friend, Bubba. He's a member at CrossFit New England. He really wants to come, and we think you should come. And for me, I'm like, well, I know Jeff. I kind of know James, and now there's another stranger. I knew nothing about you. I knew nothing about your background. I knew nothing about your past. I didn't know where you went to school at. I didn't know what you did for work. But within the first 5 minutes of meeting you, I was like, this guy's really happy. This guy's in a really, really good mood, and I enjoy his company. And since then, I don't know if I've ever had a time where I'm like, hey, I wonder if Bubba's doing all right. You've just always had such a positive attitude, even in the not best of situations, even when things are going to be tough. But you've always been a pleasure to be around. You've always just been someone where it's you can always count on Bubba to not sulk. I've never hear you complain about something. I don't hear you say anything negative about other people. How have you, over the years, and I'm sure it hasn't been from what I know and from what I don't know, it hasn't all been rainbows and butterflies. How have you been able to remain so just unbelievably positive and then give that impact onto everyone else in our friend group?
Yeah, big question. Big question. So first, let me put it in context. I was terrified to go down to St. Thomas first trip, right? We're going to train with Connor Murphy, who's a games competitor, in Latin America. He's a coach at a CrossFit gym there. I was going with James Hobart, he's a CrossFit legend.
If you just put me here on the pedestal, this is about where James
at the time, James was like,
Oh, yeah.
But, he was doing all the videos for CrossFit, and I was a hack.
Individual athlete and team.
It was amazing. And you just watch James move, just anything, like a snatch. It's like, oh, my God, I'm not worthy to be in the same room. So the fact that he was like, hey, you should go. And Jeff was an amazing athlete. It's like I say, all right, I'm just going to be the guy who sits in the corner and pouts the whole time because I can't hang with these guys. But it was an amazing trip. We got to know each other really well. Well, you don't know at the time, I was going through a really, really hard divorce. And so I was so happy because I was away from the divorce at the time. Right? It's like, oh my God, there is a life outside of this misery for the last 25 years. The world's a little larger than you get into your hole in the middle of these divorces where everything's bad. And stepping outside of that was wonderful with people who could just take you for who you are and not necessarily linked back to your life and the divorce you're going through at the moment. So it was great to be able to have a fresh start and meet new people and to kind of be able to, be the kind of person that I couldn't necessarily be inside of the relationship I was in then.
I guess that makes sense. I mean, I found out afterwards that that's what you were going through, but my question still remains the same, is, you never wanted anyone to know what you were going through, or maybe that's a good thing, maybe that's a bad thing, but you never complained about it. You weren't like, oh, if you knew, then I'd be like this. It was just like you were ready to embrace whatever was going to come your way.
Yeah. Well, so coming out of that relationship makes you open to things, but it's also, it was a really bad situation. My ex had substance abuse and kids were involved, and it was a very, very hard situation, it gives you a certain perspective, like on, like what are hard problems and what are easy problems. And so I was just reveling in the fact that, this was different, that, I wasn't facing that problem right that moment. And just enjoying that, just as much as I possibly could. Just like, it's eating like, just eating like fresh fruit for the first time, when you've had cereal, right? Forever. It's like, it's a very different world.
And then to continue on from that, from who you've been for a friend, for me and for everyone else, and just unbelievably positive. I know people that have a ton of success in their world and life, and they choose and sometimes focus on the negative, and it's tough, but I've never felt that from you. How do you think you're able to be in that? Or if there's someone who is focusing on the negative, what's some advice that you can give someone to get better at it?
Well, an awareness of there are real problems and there are imagined problems. And the real problems, they'll hit you and you'll know when they hit you, right? But a lot of people are just like so deep in their imagined problems, right? You're like, oh, my work is, not going quite well, but then there's like, things where there's people's lives at stake and stuff. And so there's perspective there that helps ground you. The other is just, I try to practice gratitude on what I have and the positive things I have in my life at all times. I think that's a great practice and keeps people like, okay, well, this, everybody gets sucked into the negatives. What about the positives you have going? What are the relationships you have with some people, your friendships, the freedom you have to do what you want to do. There's so many blessings that I have had and have gotten over the years that it makes it easy not to be, tied up around the bad things. If you focus on those things, it makes it easier to not focus on the negatives and dwell on those. Because like anything else, I know some of my best friends are they have everything in the world going for them, and yet they're always down on themselves. And there's some of that. You got to be self-critical. You got to be self-analytical. You've got to be saying, okay, these are my strengths and my weaknesses. I've got to take assay of that, and I've got to address them. But if you just constantly pound yourself and you're constantly saying, "Oh, I didn't do that well in that workout," or if you keep on hitting yourself, it's counterproductive. And you can get into that world where I'm just a bad person. I can't do this. I can't do that. It's like, no, look at what you have going for you. You know the friend I'm talking about here, right? So sometimes you just have to break out of that and say, listen, you do have a lot going for you. Just shut up, right? Get that voice out because it's absolutely wrong, and move on from that. One thing I have to say is like everybody has these voices that their story they tell themselves about themselves, like who they are and how they are, and sometimes that can go negative, and they gotta not listen to it, right? And you have to realize that everybody's telling themselves stories all the time about the kind of person they should be, or the kind of person they are, or why they handle the situation a certain way, or something like that. Everybody's living in this created little world of their own imagination. And if you appreciate that, you realize that, okay, this is just a story I'm telling myself, and I'm overly negative, and I can make that story a positive story.
Negative self-talk is definitely something that I think plays a deeper role than people think it does, whether they do it jokingly or not jokingly. Something actually funny, a couple weeks ago when James was out here, when we went to the Aoki concert, we were training. He was talking about when people say, even jokingly, say something negative about themselves. I think he was actually referencing his wife, Cassandra.
Yeah.
Just her jokingly saying something, and his response was, "Hey, you don't talk about my wife like that." and it's funny but it's true, because I can joke with you about stuff and have these conversations, but if anyone else that I knew tried to say something negative about you, it'd be fighting words, and
yeah,
but
well, that's your close friends and your spouse or whatever it is are the people who you are loyal to and support, right?
Right, and I think sometimes it's a good realization. Maybe that's something that people can try, where it's like when you hear someone's negative self-talk or someone who's close to you, it's like, don't put up with it. I wouldn't put up with it if someone else said it. So why am I going to put up with it if you said it? If you were going to come in here and be like, "Oh man, I can't believe I wasn't an astronaut. I just became a rocket scientist," and I can,
Yeah, and I get into the Stoics a little bit like that way. Like you are the master of your creative world and your opinions about things, and
right.
You are eventually responsible for the situations you allow yourself to be concerned about, right? And yeah, so people can work on that, just like they can work on becoming a better learning a new language or whatnot, right? So that's that kind of self-growth. I'm warming up to that a lot.
I feel like it's a positive that maybe you've kind of obviously subconsciously had. It's things that you've already done well without really knowing that you're doing it.
Yeah, maybe. Like I said, I've got a lot of blessings, and it's been easy in a lot of ways for me. But I've had some hardships, so I know you can persevere, and that gives you a sense of I can make through these sorts of things. It's there's a confidence that comes with some success in some areas that you can then staple onto something else. Probably is unwarranted, but you can still do it. Right? Oh yeah, I'm a good rocket scientist. I should be good at CrossFit.
I can do anything.
Yeah, exactly. But you get a lot of people that think they can do anything and sometimes it's not warranted. So I'm a big one on humility, and just kind of you need to have a certain. You got to address things a little bit. Even though you've had some successes, you can't be winning everything, and it doesn't mean you're good at everything. You've got to admit that you've got things to work on.
What do you think is a greater curse? Believing you can do anything, or believing you can do nothing?
That's a tough one because they're both awful. I think.
Well, sorry, believing you're good. No, not because believing you can do anything is good, right? You're like, I can work on something. You're good.
Well, that's delusional. That's delusional.
But okay, so reword: believing you're good at everything, or believing you're going to be bad at everything?
Well, I definitely believing you're going to be bad at everything is the biggest curse, because that one stops you from doing it, and you want to be doing it, right? So much better to believe you're going to be doing everything and try it and then realize the truth than to not try it at all. So I'm always, get yourself out there, go do it, suck at it, and then address that afterwards, right?
Better to be the man in the arena than the critic.
Yeah. So you definitely, think you can do it. I mean, I don't think any startup would be ever founded without people who thought they could do something they really couldn't do. Right?
Now, again,
there's got to be a bravado there. You have to be like, you got to be like the troubadour out there with the bull. That bull's not going to kill me. Yeah, it's gonna. You're doomed, and it's okay.
A good segue into business stuff. So, I want to hear kind of your thoughts on, you just said you can't start a startup, or you can't, create a startup without being maybe somewhat delusional, or at least.
No, a big piece of that is like you got to be blissfully unaware of all the things that it's going to take, and that's actually my challenge as an investor in startups right now. Is with years of experience, you realize all the ways that these things can fail, and it's just an immense list, and it's very easy to be like the Eeyore in the room, saying, oh, yeah, you're not going to be able to get that, you're not going to be able to grow through that, you're going to penetrate that market, you're not going to be able to get that competitor down. It's so easy to come in and just be, the negative Nancy. But I do respect a lot of the kind of the bravado that the young entrepreneurs have. Like, I can do this. I'm offering something important. I can make a difference. I can build this company, and it takes that, because you got to run out over the cliff like Wile E. Coyote, and maybe you'll fall a couple times, but eventually you get to the other side.
So one commonality is that slight delusion that you can do that. Being in business, as long as you've had and have the success that you had, what are some other things? Are there any other common denominators that you see with startups that are going to be successful versus ones that may have potentially as good of an idea, if not better, that fail?
Yeah, no. In general, I'd say there's a person who is devoted to process, like the path, the way of doing something, puts the energy and time in, even though it might not yield so well. Right? There's the dreamer who has a great idea, but they can't execute, and then there's a person who maybe has an okay idea, but damn it, they're going to spend the 40 hours, 80 hours. They're going to send all those emails they have to send. We recently invested in a company. And the guy had sent 50,000 emails out to every defense department there was to find out who might be interested with his technology. And it just grind out the emails, to spend 10 hours just doing it. And a lot of building companies just grind. And so somebody who will execute, who's willing to execute, is a huge piece of the equation.
That's interesting.
It's not always the idea. It's a lot of it, everybody, ideas are a dime a dozen. It's who can actually, do the hard work of making it happen. And nothing, if it was easy, it would have happened already. There's so many people out there trying to get the easy fruit. It's the hard things you want to look for, and somebody's willing to climb that hill and die on that hill.
It kind of seems like that goes a little bit hand in hand with not having a fear of looking bad. I know for me in the past, it's like, in past business ventures, I don't want to seem desperate. I don't want to be, when we were selling the last tickets to Watt on the Waves, just trying to give them away to people to do that. Like, I didn't want to be known to do that. So it's like, oh, your first company wasn't a great success on the very, very first cruise, you fucking loser. I didn't that's what I thought people were going to think in there. And that probably made me a little bit more reserved from putting myself out there, going to a different gym each day, whether you get one person per every 5 gyms you go to that want to sign up for it. At that point in time, it was a different mindset for me. I wasn't willing to do that. So, what do you think? Was it the fear of looking bad? Was it because I don't think I'm afraid to grind at that, but
yeah, no. So really interesting. I was thinking about things to possibly talk about today, and one of them came up that I really want to spend some time on was how to address the fear of looking bad, right? Because so I'll tell you a story, right? So my first company I put together, I struggle. This is the company I left MIT for. So we were raising money. The VC said, "Yeah, I'll fund you. I'll give you $20 million if you stay." I said, "Yeah, okay. I'm gonna leave MIT behind. I'm gonna abandon my tenured faculty position. I'm gonna stay with this company." Right. Immediately, as soon as they get funding, you say, "Oh, we want you to stay as an advisor." So you just retired, you just resigned your tenure slot at MIT, a lifetime job, right? To keep 35 people employed, but we don't really want you to do anything. We don't want you to have any real responsibility. So I struggled in that company for 4 years, just advising them. You should do this. You should do this. Like not able to actually implement or do anything. So I left that company, and it was ended up being not a great success. So I had a pretty remarkable failure. I go to my next company, which I'm like out of a whim. 6 months, no income. I've come up with this idea, which is a bunch of paper, and I'm going down to VC saying, "Hey, could you fund me on this?" and stuff like that. And I was talking to one VC and said, "Yeah. So one of the things we really like is the fact that your last company just completely tanked." And I said, "You like that?" Right? So yeah, we actually don't. This is Kleiner Perkins. This is a major venture capital company, and they said, "Yeah, we don't fund anybody unless they've had at least one really, really big failure on their resume." Right? And I was like, "Okay, why?" Right? It says, "Well, because they tried and failed, and you got to know what that's like. You gotta experience what it's like to go down the tube, right, and see everything kind of crumble around you, to know what it's like to avoid it, and B, to know what it's like to win, and what it takes to win, right? So that's what I said. Okay, yeah. So you got to embrace your failures, right? Because they will be the things that you build on when you actually get to your successes. And so I do that. I mentor a lot of companies. I mentor a lot of startup founders, and you get that a lot. Like fearful. I don't want to look bad with these VCs. I don't want to say the wrong thing. And it's like, no, trying is the most important thing. Getting out there, doing it, seeing what doesn't work, reacting. I tried this marketing strategy. I got nothing. Say you got nothing. Embrace the fact you got nothing. Figure out how to fix it. Don't hide the fact that it didn't work. It's more important that you got out there and you did it. Right, and you saw and reacted. Your cycle time, how you fix problems, is more important than whether you failed in something or not.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, you want to fail as much as possible. It turns out.
I mean, it is.
And I have a list of failures that go a mile deep, right? I mean, like my last company, I barely pulled it out because I misjudged the character of the person I was working with. Okay, live and you learn. That was almost a very big mistake. It turned out being a good exit, and I made money for the investors and stuff like that. But it was almost a zero. It came very close to being a zero because I could not work with this individual any longer. So I almost wrote it off and said, "No, we're just gonna get out of this." I can't. I was at my wit's end, and that was just a lack of not appreciating kind of the strengths and weaknesses, and whether this person being a poor judge of character, not a great judge of character there. So I've learned, and you got a lot of things, and every one of these mistakes can be a great learning opportunity, and CrossFit makes you humble too, right? Because every one of these workouts will crush you, make you feel awful, and you didn't do it well, and then every now and then you do a good one, and you feel good about it. Like every now and then, once every 3 or 4 months, I do a workout called Nate, because that was the one workout I could do really well on. It's been muscle ups and handstand push-ups, all the kind of lighter body weights, so smaller guys like me can usually accelerate on that, do well on that. And I just do that just to feel good about myself, because I sucked at so many other workouts. Right?
You got to have that one little win.
Yeah, you got to have that one workout. But you like it. You just go back to that and have that coffee cake, or have that ice cream at night, or have that one workout that makes you feel good about things.
So Nate is a CrossFit hero workout named after Nate Hardy, and it is as many rounds as possible in 20 minutes, 2 ring muscle ups, 4 handstand push-ups, and 8 kettlebell swings, the 2-pood kettlebell, which also weighs 70 pounds?
Yeah, it's a 70-pound kettlebell, yeah. That's the hard part of that workout for me.
72 pounds. 70 pounds?
72.
Yeah, 72 pounds.
Yeah, that was the hard part of that workout. So, but I excelled the muscle ups and the handstand push-ups, so that like I was competitive, and I could feel good about those workouts. But give me a rowing and a weightlifting workout. It's so, yeah, you got to suck at some things. You got to embrace that and move on.
When you're telling me that, instead of thinking, oh, how am I going to respond to this, I was just kind of like pinpointing everything you were saying to try to listen, because it was so relative to a lot of my experiences. And, times when you don't want to be like, oh, I tried this and I failed. It's like, oh, we've done like all of these things successful. But I'm like, even my company now, I'm like, man, I've had a couple ideas that I was like, yeah. And then after trying it and trying it and trying it, and until there's no more trying, and you're like, okay, maybe this was just a bad idea. This was what I can tell you what doesn't work. This. So now we have this list, just one shorter of what could work.
And sometimes the reason why it failed is something you just were not aware of, or it's completely out of your control, or it's like people just don't like doing that, right?
Yeah.
And there's no way you can imagine all the reasons why things don't work. You have to be out there and cycle. So like when I do a lot of high kind of deep tech startups, and they've got a lot of technology cycles and they're complicated systems. I said, don't worry about whether it's going to work or not. Worry about how fast you can iterate. What's your cycle time to get the next learning? How fast can you make that device, test it, and then fix it? Because that's the important thing, how many times you can go through and fix it, not whether you got it right and you stumbled on that first design.
I suppose you almost think about like an iOS system, right? If Apple waited to make sure that they had every piece of technology that anyone ever wanted in a phone, they still wouldn't have an iPhone.
Yeah. And so I'm a bit of a perfectionist, like on the, I had a dad who made me mow the yard like 4 times to get every little blade of grass right. And I once edged my yard 5 times just to make sure it was all properly edged and stuff like that. So he was a crazy person and just forced that into me. So I've got a lot of that residual perfectionism. So it's very hard for me to kind of do this and not to do things right and just kind of go and when the company where I made the bad choice with the founder, it was a software company. And what I didn't realize is that all software is horribly broken. Right? It's just how fast people find it, right? And so we would launch things like, oh my God, it's like, I just hope we don't get 12,000 people coming back with this payment error, right? And that kind of took all the kind of, it's like in the engineering sciences and aerospace, you test and retest and you work until it's perfect, right? In software, you're throwing stuff out there that is not even close to perfect and just iterating and going. And frankly, I think in a lot of ways, unless there's lives at stake, that it has to be right, like in a launch with people on it or something, it's okay to...
Like a heart stint.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's okay to make mistakes unless somebody dies, right?
Then it's a little bit... The consequences are a little bit more serious.
Yeah. So that company did teach me that you iterate. Just throw it out there. Get it good enough, like it's a cliche now, but good enough, perfect is the enemy of good enough, and get things going.
We'll work our way back into fitness, but kind of one more question that I have for you on this topic is, we talked about some things where you're like, hey, here's another common denominator of success. Are there any surefire ways where you're like, that's going to be a failure? Are there anything that you see in a company where you're like, not a chance because of X?
Let's see. Surefire, not a trust.
Because I'm sure even working with like the wrong egos cannot be fun, but can still be successful.
Yeah, but that's the number one. So it's the people involved in the company is the number one indicator of whether it's going to be successful or not, right? So we look for a measure of capability. They don't have to be fantastic, but they have to be able to execute and work, and they have to be able to figure out what the hard problem is or what they really have to solve. The filter is important. Like they have to figure out what they need to do and let go of the things they don't need to do. Right?
Yeah.
So that's a big skill, is like, filtering out and only, spending your time and effort on the most important things. So ego is the biggest issue you get with the startup founders. Is they think they can do anything, which is good sometimes, but it can be bad, right? Because they don't have the humility to kind of appreciate that they're going to have to work. right? That if it fails, they're going to have to revolve, and they're going to have to admit they were wrong. And sometimes ego gets in the way of people admitting that they're wrong about things. And so that's a common way I see companies kind of going down, is fear of failure, afraid of embracing failure, and because their ego is too important. I mean,
almost like fear of admitting failure.
And every situation where I've misjudged a person has been because they were, really had narcissistic tendencies. They were just all about themselves and their ego and protecting that, as opposed to embracing the process and their failures and learning and growing. So it's that kind of growth mentality is the biggest indicator of success. Narcissism is the biggest indicator of failure.
Huh. It is crazy how we can just naturally draw a lot of things back into the CrossFit gym. And I try not to be the podcast that always talks about CrossFit, but it's what I know, and it's assisted in just improving the quality of life in so many different people. But you talk about that, it's like what's going to kill someone in a CrossFit gym is an ego, is someone who other people don't want to be around, that's so involved with themselves and not involved with the greater community. And the greatest bit of success that's going to come from a CrossFit community is the ability to put in work, is having humility and being able to show up day in, day in when those workouts are going to suck and all of that stuff.
Yeah, so one of the biggest, there was the exercise, fitness, physical aspect of CrossFit. Mm-hmm. And then there's community aspect of CrossFit. And I was one of the first 10 at CrossFit New England, right? So I was a family member, Ben's good friend. I was, in the early days of CrossFit, it was very, very much a community. Everybody's there supporting everybody else through their trials and tribulations and their hard workouts.
And one second, when he references Ben, he's talking about Ben Bergeron, who is the owner and operator of CrossFit New England, one of the most OG CrossFit affiliates in the world. Also one of the most successful from a competition side and known for incredible communities. Ben is known for just being an outstanding coach and motivator in that. So when he references Ben, it's a big deal because of...
And I'm not going to talk about his coaching or anything like that, but we had built a very special community at CrossFit New England in the early days. I think all CrossFit gyms maybe even migrated away from that, but it was... CrossFit in the early days was just like, it was like, underground fight club. You just get in there and do something, everybody's supporting you. But for me, when I was going through my kind of hard times with the divorce and stuff and the substance abuse and having that community to support you, whether they knew it or not, they were still supporting you and for you and for your development. That was incredibly important. So after I exited one of my companies, I wanted to get back into there and kind of help building that. And this is when I built a company called Tribe, which was software for gyms. And we focused it, just all the tools for communicating with your members, getting that community formed. And I really loved kind of that branding, that kind of mission for the company of not really focusing so much on the fitness aspects and the performance tracking and the leaderboards, but more on what makes people come together and why are they coming together around this gym, and the kind of the community aspects. And I think that's one of the biggest and most important things about CrossFit that it's not necessarily carried forward anymore. Now they got the competitions with people like the blazing amazing athletes and the prize monies and you don't get back to the community support and the cheering when people finish the workouts and those things that are, I think, for a person who's coming in there, they're overweight, they're spending the time and effort to get into the gym and do this, and having other people help them through that is enormous. And that's one of the biggest values I saw across from it. It gave me a lot, and that's why I stick with it. That's why I gave back in that company and try to form the company around that. And that's why I still do it today. It's just to kind of see people go through the journey of help. I mean, I was CrossFit coach for 3 years at CrossFit Cape Ann. Never got paid for it. Still keep up with all the people in the class because you form a relationship helping these people reach their goals and do things. I'm still great friends with that. I had an amazing time with people helping them do that.
It's rewarding for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It's an amazing experience, and seeing people kind of grow into that community and friendships and encouraging that is just so much.
Do you think that aspect has helped you in a business perspective?
Yeah, well, the coaching and communication have certainly helped. I'm not a natural communicator, so how to lay out a fun workout or explain to people, it's one I didn't really do well as a teacher at MIT. It's very hard for me to go and tell people information. So the more you do that, the better you get at it, and that's helped. Appreciating community and leadership and that sort of stuff, and helping people along and developing subordinates or developing athletes. That helped in the mentoring and helping people grow in your company. Has somebody pick companies? I don't know about picking companies or whether it's but growing talent in the companies and taking people who could do the work and moving them into positions that would help them develop to the next level. That it certainly has done that. You get to see who's got the grit to do it, right?
Yeah.
And who can expand into something new and who wants to try new things.
That's pretty cool. I feel like I learned a lot from like the business side of things, from our decade plus of being friends and conversations and that stuff. But to be able to sit down and kind of hear some of this stuff and kind of hear like your advice towards just like things in general rather than it just being my life is just incredibly profound and potent to get that much information in an hour. Like there's a part in that when you were talking and I was like, I'm gonna be like, hey, if you're gonna listen to anything in this podcast, if you're not gonna listen to it, listen to this. If you are gonna listen to it, listen to the whole thing. But like at like this point in time when you kind of reference a lot of that stuff, because you have been there, you have done that, you have an unbelievable wealth of knowledge from obviously your life experiences and the extent of sometimes the negative, a lot of positives, but it's really cool to hear you kind of openly talk about it, even the struggles that have inevitably come up along the way. So I think people are really going to benefit from kind of hearing about your life story.
Thanks. I mean, I decided to do the podcast because I'm really lousy at podcasts, and I figure I just got to keep myself throwing into the rink, and eventually it'll stick. I'll get better at it, and I'm trying to get better as a communicator and somebody who can talk about things and relate to people, and that's sort of those sorts of aspects of my life I'm trying to get better at. So
Amazing.
This has helped me. It helped me kind of get a little better and a little more comfortable doing this sort of thing.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Well, if you guys have any questions for Bubba directly, Bubba, what's the easiest way for people to get a hold of you?
I'd say probably email, bhagood@tenonventures.com or...
You want to spell that out for everyone?
Yeah, bhagood, BHAGOOD, at tenonventures, TENONVENTURES.com. English and spelling is another one of my weaknesses. Or my personal email, bubhagood@gmail.com.
BUBHAGOOD
@gmail.com, yeah. Yeah, those are the easiest way get a hold of me.
What about people on social media? They're like, I want to follow this absolute weapon of a human being.
Oh yeah, all my 20 posts. Bub Hagood, Bubba Hagood, I think, in Instagram.
At Bubba Hagood.
At Bubba Hagood, yeah. You'll get some frogman swim posts trying to raise money. You'll get some pictures of people in pretty places, waterfalls and stuff. But I'll try to put more content up there.
Amazing, and not that you need to, but I feel like if people want to kind of follow along the journey or have any questions, I mean, you've obviously been.
Well, one of the things I want to do is I want to start putting my experiences raising this venture fund and trying to put things in, trying to get a little more out there about me, a little more about personally my perspective on growing this. How can I help companies? Because the reason why I have the fund is to help companies. Yes, I'd like to make money, but also I like quality individuals, like to see them grow and like to help them build companies. So I want to put a little more out there, a little more content out for people to kind of start, maybe resources and advice that can help those companies grow as well. So I'm toying with the idea of doing a podcast around company building and startups and things.
That's great. Well, I know the perfect studio.
Yeah, right.
Right down the street from your house. And I mean, I think even just like, even if people are at the beginning stages or, advanced levels of what you're doing in that. I think speaking, even though it was pretty surface level, like the competency of what you're doing and your successes kind of speak for themselves. But what you were able to talk about today was incredibly helpful for me, and I hope everyone else got something out of it as well.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's great. I appreciate the opportunity to come in and do this, right? It's only you as a podcast moderator that would bring me in here, because I've seen you, with people and weddings and stuff like that. You kind of know the right questions to ask, the right things to talk about. You definitely put people at ease. You've got a natural way about you there, a skill there that I'm envious of and appreciative of in this sort of doing a podcast like this.
Well, thanks, Bubba. I appreciate that. It is a little bit awkward having conversations with your best friends, pretending that I don't know answers. Right? I tell old stories.
I bet you didn't know a single answer I said today.
There's a few where I was like, I didn't know that. But knowing a lot of the stuff, like the CrossFit Games and that journey, it's cool. It's cool to sit and chat with your friends. who would have thought, in 2013, in August, down in St. Thomas, which, by the way, it's not always like we're not talking about rocket science and fitness all the time. We like to have a good time too, and I think sometimes those are the, sitting around a beach.
I haven't figured out yet exactly. There are people come in and out of your lives, and sometimes they come into your life and they leave, right? And it's just not right. But you're one of my enduring friends who's come into my life, and we've marched together now, right? So. I haven't figured out the formula for that, right? Maybe just got to meet a lot of people and the right ones stick. I don't. Maybe that's the theme of this podcast. But certainly, I valued our 10 years as friends and stuff like that. And but I haven't figured out what the formula is and why certain people stay with you and certain people don't.
I don't know. I think we've got a pretty good group right now. So
yeah, it's great.
Whatever the magic is, we just keep rolling with it.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, guys, and if you are listening to this for the first time and you don't know where to find us, at Big Night Fitness on Instagram. If you want to keep updated with what we have going on as far as classes, podcasts, retreats, celebrity training, hotel training, everything that we do, you can go to www.bignightfitness.com and keep up with us there. We'll see you guys next week for another episode of the BFit Podcast. Thank you for listening.